I was 19, standing outside O'Hare with a dying phone and 12 missed calls that went unanswered. While other families hugged, I calculated how far 6% battery could get me. My mom just texted me to stop creating drama. That night, I realized they did not forget me. They replaced me. But before this was over, she would leave 37 messages begging because I finally did the one thing they never thought I would do. My name is Haley Boyd, and at 19 years old, I was learning the exact temperature at which the human heart freezes over. It turns out, it is not the temperature of liquid nitrogen or the void of deep space. It is the temperature of the wind chill outside Terminal 3 at O'Hare International Airport in the middle of December. When you realize that the people who gave you life have absolutely no interest in sustaining it. The sliding glass doors behind me hissed open and shut, exhaling gusts of stale, heated air that smelled of pretzels and floor wax. But I could not go back inside. The security guard had already given me the look that meant I was loitering. So I stood on the concrete curb, my knuckles white as I gripped the handle of my oversized suitcase. The wind here was violent. It did not just blow, it slapped. It cut through my thin denim jacket and settled into the marrow of my bones. I pulled my phone out of my pocket for the 20th time in 5 minutes. The screen was cracked near the home button, a spiderweb fracture I had been meaning to fix for 3 months. But right now, the only thing that mattered was the battery icon in the top right corner. It was red. It read 6%. 6% battery to bridge the 90-mile gap between Chicago and my driveway in Milwaukee. 6% battery to save myself. I unlocked the screen with trembling fingers. My call log was a humiliating scroll of red. Outgoing arrows. I had called my mother, Diane, 4 times. I had called my father, Mark, 3 times. I had called my older brother, Logan, 3 times. I had even called my younger sister, Kelsey, twice, though I knew she usually kept her phone on Do Not Disturb just to seem important. 12 calls, 12 opportunities for someone to pick up and say, "We are almost there, Haley, hang tight." 12 opportunities for someone to say, "Oh my God, traffic is a nightmare, but we are coming." Instead, I got 4 different voicemail greetings. My mother's voice was crisp and professional, the voice she used for her real estate clients. "You have reached Diane Boyd. Leave a message." My father's was the default robotic voice provided by the carrier because he could never be bothered to set it up. Logan's was a smug recording of him laughing with his fraternity brothers in the background, a remnant of his college glory days that he refused to delete. Kelsey's mailbox was full. I stared at the phone. It was 7:45 in the evening. My flight had landed 40 minutes ago. I had texted the family group chat before I even took off from Denver. I had texted them when we landed. I had texted them when I got my bag. Silence. Absolute, radio silence. A shuttle bus roared past, spewing gray exhaust into the freezing air. I coughed. Pulling my scarf up over my nose, down the sidewalk, a minivan screeched to a halt. The side door flew open, and a woman in a puffy beige coat jumped out. She shrieked, throwing her arms around a girl who looked about my age. The father got out of the driver's seat, beaming, and hoisted the girl's heavy duffel bag into the trunk like it weighed nothing. They were a flurry of motion and warmth. I watched them hug. I watched the mother smooth the girl's hair back. I watched them pile into the heated car and drive away, leaving nothing but a gap in the traffic where love used to be. I looked down at my phone again. 5%. "You can't stand here, miss." I flinched. An airport employee in a neon yellow safety vest was standing 3 feet away, holding a glowing orange baton. He looked exhausted, his breath pluming in the air between us. "I am waiting for a ride," I said, my voice cracking. I sounded pathetic even to my own ears. "They are just running a little late." "Active loading only," he recited, looking past me at a line of taxis. "If they aren't here, you need to circle back inside or move to the rideshare zone. You are blocking the flow." I looked at the empty space in front of me. I was blocking nothing but the wind, but I nodded, because that is what I was trained to do. Be agreeable, be low maintenance, do not cause a scene. "Okay," I whispered. I'm moving. I dragged my suitcase toward the rideshare pickup area. One of the wheels had a flat spot, so it made a rhythmic thud 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 against the pavement, a heartbeat of failure. As I walked, my phone buzzed in my hand. My heart leaped into my throat. This was it. They were here. They were just stuck in the cell phone lot. I looked at the screen. It was a text message from Mom. Stop making drama. You always want attention. You're fine. I stopped walking. People swerved around me, cursing under their breath. But I could not move. I read the words again. Stop making drama. I was 19 years old, standing alone in a freezing city, 90 miles from home, with no money for a hotel and a dying phone. I had not asked for a parade. I had asked for a ride. I had asked for the bare minimum of parental obligation, and her response was to accuse me of performing for an audience that did not exist. Something inside me snapped. It was a quiet snap, like a dry twig under a heavy boot. It was the sound of my childhood finally breaking under the weight of their indifference. I looked at the battery. 4%. I did not text back. I did not beg. I did not explain that I was scared or cold. I opened the Uber app. My fingers were so numb I had to tap the screen twice to get it to register. I typed in my home address in the suburbs of Milwaukee. The price surged on the screen. It was $240. I had $300 in my bank account. That money was supposed to be for textbooks next semester. It was supposed to be my food budget for January. I did not hesitate. I pressed confirm. The app began to search for a driver. Connecting 3%. Driver found. Mohammed is 5 minutes away. 2%. I memorized the license plate number. I memorized the make and model of the car. A silver Toyota Camry. 1%. I took a screenshot of the driver's details, purely out of instinct, even though I wouldn't be able to look at it. And then, as the screen dimmed, I made a vow. It was not a dramatic declaration shouted into the wind. It was a cold, hard fact that settled in my chest. From this moment on, I thought, staring at the black mirror of my dead phone, I am an orphan. I will live as if I have no family. The phone died. I stood in the darkness of the pickup zone for 5 minutes, shivering so violently my teeth clattered together. When the silver Camry pulled up, I almost cried, not out of relief, but out of the sheer exhaustion of holding myself together. Mohammed, the driver, popped the trunk. He didn't just sit in the car. He got out. He was an older man with kind eyes and a thick gray mustache. He took my suitcase from my frozen hand. Heavy bag, he said, smiling gently. Going a long way. Milwaukee, I managed to say. He paused, looking at me. He took in my red nose, my watering eyes, the way I was hugging myself to stop the shaking. Long drive for a taxi, he noted softly. No one is coming. I laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound that hurt my throat. No, I said. They are busy. I got into the back seat. The heat was on, blasting from the vents. It felt like burning, but it was glorious. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. Do you have a charger? I asked quietly. My phone died. Of course, Mohammed said. He passed a white cable over his shoulder without turning around. iPhone, yes. Yes, thank you. I plugged it in. I watched the charging symbol appear, but I did not turn the phone on. I did not want to see if they had called. I did not want to see if Mom had texted again to tell me I was being selfish for taking an Uber. I just sat in the silence, watching the highway lights blur past like streaks of orange neon. The drive took 1 hour and 45 minutes. I stared out the window the entire time, watching the landscape shift from the industrial clutter of Chicago to the dark, wooded stretches of the interstate, and finally to the manicured, familiar streets of my neighborhood. I saw the houses of my childhood friends. I saw the park where I broke my arm in the 3rd grade. I saw the high school where I had graduated just a year ago, thinking I was escaping, only to be dragged back by gravity. When Mohammed turned onto my street, I sat up straighter. My house, my parents' house, was blazing with light. It looked like a lighthouse in a sea of darkness. Every window was glowing. There were cars parked all along the curb, blocking the mailboxes, creeping onto the lawns of the neighbors. I recognized my aunt's SUV. I recognized the luxury sedan of my father's business partner. I recognized the rusted hatchback of Logan's best friend. For one distinct, stupid second, hope flared in my chest. They planned a surprise party. I thought, that is why they didn't answer. They wanted to surprise me. They wanted to make a big deal out of me coming home for winter break. The thought was intoxicating. It washed away the cold of the airport. It made me feel guilty for the anger I had nursed for 90 miles. Of course they hadn't forgotten me. They were just overwhelmed with preparations. "Looks like a party," Mohammed said, pulling up to the only empty spot, which was 3 houses down. "Yeah," I breathed, unbuckling my seatbelt. I think it might be for me." "That is nice," he said. "Very nice." I tipped him $40 in the app once my phone rebooted, leaving me with $20 to my name. I didn't care. I dragged my suitcase down the sidewalk, the wheels rumbling over the cracks. I could hear the music from the street. It was loud, thumping bass that vibrated against the siding of the house. I walked up the driveway, maneuvering between the cars. My heart was pounding. I prepared my face. I needed to look surprised. I needed to look happy. I needed to not look like I had just spent 2 hours wishing I was someone else. I reached for the front door handle. It was unlocked. I pushed the door open and stepped into the foyer. The heat hit me first, smelling of expensive cologne, warm cheese, and wine. The noise was deafening. There were at least 50 people packed into our living room and kitchen. They were holding plastic cups, laughing, shouting over the music, and then I saw the banner. It was strung across the archway leading to the dining room. It was huge, professionally printed on glossy vinyl with gold lettering. "Congrats, Logan, VP of Operations." The air left my lungs. It wasn't a welcome home party. It wasn't a surprise for me. It was a celebration for Logan. My brother, the golden boy, the 24-year-old who had never left home, who had walked straight into a job at Dad's friend's company, and who apparently had just been promoted. I stood there in the entryway, still wearing my coat, my suitcase handle gripped in my hand. I felt invisible. I felt like a ghost haunting the wrong house. People brushed past me. Someone spilled a little bit of beer on my shoe and didn't apologize. No one looked at me. No one screamed. "Haley's here." I scanned the room, desperate to make eye contact with anyone who shared my DNA. I saw my father first. He was by the fireplace, holding a glass of scotch, one arm draped around Logan's shoulders. Logan was wearing a suit, his face flushed with triumph. He looked like a king holding court. Dad was laughing at something Logan said, a look of pure, unadulterated pride on his face, a look I had never, not once in 19 years, been on the receiving end of. Then I saw Kelsey. She was on the sofa, taking a selfie with a plate of appetizers. She looked up, her eyes sliding over me like I was a piece of furniture, and then looked back down at her phone. Finally, I saw my mother. Diane was coming out of the kitchen, holding a tray of stuffed mushrooms. She was wearing her hosting face, a bright, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was wearing a new dress, something silver and shimmering. She turned and saw me. The smile didn't falter, but her eyes went cold. She didn't drop the tray. She didn't rush over to hug me. She didn't ask why I was late or how I'd gotten home. She walked up to me, stopped 2 feet away, and looked down at my suitcase. "Move that," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You are in the way of the guests." I stared at her. The noise of the party seemed to fade into a dull roar, like the sound of blood rushing in my ears. "Mom," I said, "I was at the airport." "I know," she said, adjusting a mushroom on the tray. "I told you to stop making a scene. Logan has worked incredibly hard for this night. Haley, do not ruin it with your moodiness." "I called you 12 times, I said. My voice was steady, terrifyingly steady. "I had 6% battery. It was 10 degrees outside." She rolled her eyes. "And you are here now, aren't you? You figured it out? You are an adult. Haley, act like one." She gestured vaguely toward the stairs with her elbow. "Take your things upstairs and change out of those clothes. You look like a vagrant. If you are going to come down, try to smile. This is a big night for this family." She turned her back on me and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of laughing people. I stood there for a long moment. I looked at the banner, "Congrats, Logan." I looked at my father, who still hadn't noticed me. I looked at the suitcase that contained my entire life from Denver. My mother was right. I had figured it out. I gripped the handle of my suitcase tighter. I did not cry. I did not scream. I simply moved my bag out of the way, just like she asked. But as I hauled it up the carpeted stairs, stepping over the coats of strangers that had been carelessly thrown over the banister, I knew one thing for certain. I was not the daughter of this house anymore. I was just a guest who had overstayed her welcome. And guests, unlike family, eventually leave. But before I left, I was going to make sure they knew exactly what they had thrown away. The noise in the living room was a physical weight, pressing against my temples. I stood near the bookshelf that held encyclopedias from 1998 and framed photos of Logan playing Little League baseball. Trying to blend into the drywall, I had changed out of my travel-worn clothes into a sweater and jeans, but I still felt the chill of O'Hare clinging to my skin, a phantom layer of frost that the central heating could not melt. In front of me, the people who were supposed to be my family were performing a play titled The Perfect American Life, and they were all hitting their marks. My father, Mark, stood in the center of the room. He had loosened his tie, the universal signal that he was relaxed and in his element. He held a crystal tumbler of scotch in one hand and raised it high, the amber liquid catching the light of the chandelier. The room quieted down, the chatter subsiding into respectful silence. "Attention, everyone," Dad boomed, his voice rich with a pride that made my stomach turn. "I want to propose a toast." He looked at Logan. My brother was standing by the fireplace, one hand in his pocket, looking casually triumphant. He had that specific Boyd jawline square, confident, and utterly unbothered by the struggles of lesser mortals. "To my son," Dad said, beaming. "To the new Vice President of Operations." You know, when Logan was born, I looked at him and thought, this kid is going to go places. But I didn't think he would get there this fast. Laughter rippled through the room, polite, admiring laughter. Dad took a step closer to Logan and clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Logan, you are the rock of this household. You are the future of this family. We are all just riding in your wake, son." The future of this family. The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. I stood 10 feet away, holding a half-empty bottle of water, and I felt myself shrinking. If Logan was the future, what was I? Was I the past? Was I a footnote? Or was I just the invisible infrastructure, the support beam hidden behind the drywall that no one thinks about until the house collapses? Everyone raised their glasses. "To Logan," they chorused. I did not raise my water bottle. I watched my mother, Diane, sip her white wine, her eyes glistening with tears of validation. This was her victory too. Her son, her masterpiece, was succeeding. The narrative was complete. I turned away. Suddenly unable to breathe the same air as them, I needed to get to the kitchen to throw away my bottle, just to have a destination. As I navigated through the crowd, I nearly collided with my sister, Kelsey. She was 16, wearing a skirt that cost more than my entire semester's book budget, and she was aggressively typing on her phone. She looked up, her thumbs hovering over the screen. "Oh," she said flatly, "you are back." There was no malice in her voice, which somehow made it worse. There was just boredom. I was as interesting to her as a lamp that had been moved to a different corner of the room. "Hi, Kelsey," I said. "Good to see you too." She didn't catch the sarcasm, or she didn't care. "Do you have a charger block?" Logan took mine for the speaker system. "No," I said. "I left mine in the Uber because I was rushing." "Okay." "Weird," she muttered, and she was already walking away. Her attention sucked back into the glowing rectangle in her hand. She didn't ask about the flight. She didn't ask why I was late. She didn't ask if I was hungry. I was just a dispenser of electronic accessories that had failed to dispense. I bypassed the kitchen and went straight for the stairs. I climbed them slowly, the sounds of the party fading into a muffled thumping below my feet. My bedroom door was closed. I pushed it open and flipped on the light switch. The room smelled dusty. It was the smell of a space that is only entered for cleaning, never for living. My bed was made with military precision, the pillows stiff and uninviting. On my desk, a pile of Logan's old fitness magazines had been stacked, as if my room was slowly being converted into a storage unit for his hobbies. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I told myself I just wanted to check my email, to see if my professors had posted the syllabus for the spring semester. I needed to anchor myself in something real, something that belonged to me. The world of academia, of design projects and deadlines, felt a million miles away from the shrine to Logan downstairs. But it was the only lifeline I had. I logged in. My fingers moved automatically, bypassing the student portal and clicking on the bookmark for my bank. It was a reflex, a nervous tick I had developed over the last 2 years of scraping by. Check the balance. Make sure the rent check cleared. Make sure you have enough for groceries. The page loaded. I blinked. I leaned closer to the screen. Certain that the glare from the overhead light was playing tricks on my eyes, I had 2 accounts. One was my checking account, which held the pathetic sum of $20 after the Uber ride. The other was a savings account titled College Fund. It wasn't a massive trust fund. It was money I had earned. It was 3 summers of lifeguarding. It was 2 years of working the front desk at the campus library. It was graduation money from my grandmother before she passed away. It was supposed to be $4,200. It was my safety net. It was the money I was saving for a deposit on an apartment so I wouldn't have to live in the dorms next year. The balance read $200. I stared at the number. 2 zeros. No comma. My breath hitched in my chest. I felt a cold flush of panic wash over me. Starting at my scalp and racing down to my fingertips, I clicked on transaction history so hard I almost cracked the trackpad. There it was, dated 3 days ago, online transfer to D. Boyd. Checking ending in 4492, amount $4,000, D. Boyd. Diane Boyd. My mother. I sat there for a full minute, my brain trying to process the data. It had to be a mistake. Maybe the bank had flagged something. Maybe she had moved it to a higher interest account for me. But I knew. Deep down in the pit of my stomach, I knew exactly what this was. I stood up. The chair scraped loud and harsh against the wood floor. I didn't feel the cold anymore. I didn't feel the exhaustion from the airport. I felt a heat that started in the center of my chest and radiated outward, burning away the hesitation, burning away the desire to be the good daughter. I walked out of my room. I walked down the stairs. I did not look at the guests this time. I walked with a singular, terrifying purpose toward the kitchen. The double doors swung open. The kitchen was a chaotic catering zone. Empty wine bottles were lined up on the granite island. My mother was standing by the sink, rinsing a platter. My father was leaning against the counter, eating a shrimp cocktail. They looked up as I entered. I must have looked like a ghost, or a storm. "Mom," I said. My voice was low, but it cut through the ambient noise of the dishwasher. "Haley, grab a towel," she said, not looking at me. Someone spilled red wine on the rug in the foyer. "Where is my money?" I asked. She froze. The water was still running, splashing over her hands. She turned off the faucet slowly and turned around, drying her hands on a dish towel with deliberate, maddening calmness. "Excuse me," she said. "My savings account," I said, stepping closer. $4,000. It was transferred to your account 3 days ago. Where is it?" My father chewed his shrimp slowly, his eyes darting between me and Mom. He didn't look surprised. "Lower your voice," Mom hissed, glancing at the door to the dining room. "We have guests." "I do not care about the guests," I said, and for the first time in my life, I meant it. That was my tuition money. That was my rent money. Why is it in your account? Mom sighed, the kind of long, suffering sigh she used when a cashier took too long to scan her coupons. She leaned back against the counter, crossing her arms. We had to borrow it. Haley, it is not a big deal. Borrow it, I repeated, without asking me for what. Logan's certification trip, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He needed to go to that leadership seminar in Zurich before he started the new role. It was a requirement for the promotion. We were a little liquid poor this month because of the party costs, so I moved some funds around. It is an investment. I felt my mouth fall open. You stole my life savings to send Logan to Switzerland. It is not stealing, Dad interjected, his voice stern. He put the shrimp tail down on a napkin. We are a family. We pool resources. Logan's promotion increases the net worth of this entire family. When he does well, we all do well. I don't do well, I snapped, my voice rising. I am eating instant noodles in Denver. I have 6% battery because my phone is 3 years old. How does Logan going to Zurich help me pay for my textbooks? Lower your voice, Mom whispered aggressively, stepping forward and grabbing my arm. Her fingers dug into my sweater. Stop being so dramatic. You always make everything about you. It is a loan. We will put it back. When? I demanded, pulling my arm away. When things settle down, she said vaguely. Maybe after tax season. That is 4 months away, I said. I have tuition due in January. Then get more hours at the library, Dad said. He picked up his scotch glass again. Look, Haley, let's be realistic here. Your path. Whatever it is you are doing with the art and the computer things, it is unstable. It is a hobby. Logan's career is real. It is solid. It brings prestige to the name. We had to prioritize the asset that yields the highest return. That is just basic economics. The room seemed to tilt. There it was, the naked, ugly truth. They hadn't just forgotten me at the airport. They hadn't just overlooked me. They had done the math. To Mark and Diane Boyd, I was not a daughter. I was a low-yield savings account. I was a rainy day fund they could raid whenever their real investment Logan needed a fresh coat of paint. My labor, my savings, my struggle. It was all just raw material to be harvested to build Logan's pedestal higher. They stared at me, waiting for me to fold, waiting for me to apologize for being selfish, waiting for me to accept the logic that my existence was secondary to my brother's success. I looked at my mother's face, smooth with Botox and self-righteousness. I looked at my father, confident in his theft. I realized then that screaming would do nothing. Crying would do nothing. If I cried, they would just call me emotional. If I screamed, they would call me unstable. They would rewrite the story so that I was the villain who tried to ruin Logan's big night over a few dollars. I took a deep breath. The air in the kitchen tasted like betrayal and expensive Chardonnay. Okay, I said softly. Mom relaxed instantly. Her shoulders dropped. She smiled, a triumphant little twitch of her lips. Good. I knew you would understand. Now, go help Kelsey with the music. Okay, I said again. I turned around and walked out of the kitchen. I walked past the party, past the banner, past the people who thought this was a happy home. I walked up the stairs, my steps quiet and measured. I went into my room and closed the door. I locked it. I sat down on the edge of the bed and pulled out my dead phone, which was now charged to 18%. I opened the Notes app. I created a new folder. I typed the title in all caps, Receipts. My hands were not shaking anymore. I felt a strange, icy clarity, like the air outside the terminal. I began to type. Item 1, December 19th, $4,000 transferred from savings without consent. Reason Logan's trip to Zurich. Item 2, December 19th. Left at O'Hare for 3 hours. No pickup. Cost of Uber, $240. I stopped. I thought back. I peeled back the layers of the last few years, looking at every memory through this new, harsh lens. Item 3 August, 2 years ago. My car was sold to pay for Logan's DUI lawyer. I was told the engine died. Item 4, freshman year. My scholarship money was used to fix the roof, but Logan got a new loft apartment that same month. I typed for an hour. I listed dates. I listed amounts. I listed lies. Downstairs, the music swelled. I could hear them cheering again. They were celebrating their future. They didn't know that upstairs, in the dark, I was writing the history that would eventually bury them. I didn't shed a single tear. I just kept typing, turning my pain into data, turning my heartbreak into a dossier. Silence was not surrender. Silence was just the sound of a weapon loading. The flight back to Denver in January felt less like a return to school and more like an evacuation. I sat in the middle seat of the last row, my knees pressed against the plastic tray table, listening to the hum of the engines and trying to ignore the gnawing hunger in my stomach. I had left Milwaukee with nothing but my suitcase and the clothes on my back. There was no envelope of cash tucked into my pocket from my father. There were no leftovers packed by my mother. There was just the echoing silence of a house that had consumed my savings and then asked me to clean up the mess. Life in Denver became a study in survival mathematics. My tuition had been paid before the theft, thankfully, but my living expenses were a different equation entirely. The $4,000 my mother had borrowed was supposed to cover my rent share, my groceries, and the materials for my senior design thesis. Without it, I was free-falling. I moved out of the apartment I shared with 2 friends because I could not make the February rent. I found a room in a basement unit 3 miles from campus, a space so small that if I stretched my arms out, I could touch both walls. It smelled of damp earth and laundry detergent from the washer and dryer that sat just outside my door. The rent was $600 a month. I could manage that if I picked up 3 extra shifts a week at the campus IT help desk and stopped eating anything that wasn't sold in a bulk package. February was a blur of gray slush and exhaustion. I became the person who stood in the grocery aisle for 10 minutes, staring at a carton of eggs, calculating the price per egg to see if it was a viable source of protein for the week. I learned that if you went to the bakery section right before closing, they would sometimes give you the day-old bagels for free. I learned that sleep was a substitute for dinner. While I was counting quarters to use the coin-operated laundry machine, my phone would buzz with the only form of affection my family knew how to give demands. They never called to ask how classes were going. They never called to ask if I was warm enough. The notifications were sporadic, appearing on my screen like little landmines. Mom, what is the Netflix password again? The TV logged us out. Logan, hey, do you have the login for that Adobe account I need to edit a PDF for work? Dad, forward me that email about the insurance policy. I can't find it. I answered them. That was the pathetic part. I was so conditioned to be the family support system that I would be sitting in a cold basement, wrapped in 2 blankets to save on heating, typing out passwords for people who were sitting in a climate-controlled living room watching movies I was paying for. It was in March, during a particularly brutal week of midterms, that I finally looked at my credit card statement closely. I had been avoiding it, afraid to see the mounting interest from the few times I had to buy groceries on credit. But I needed to check a charge for a textbook. I scrolled down the list of transactions on my banking app. King Soopers $12.40, RTD, Transport $6, Chegg Services $14. Then I saw it, a recurring charge for $29.99. I frowned. I didn't have any subscriptions that cost $30. I tapped on the transaction details. Holloway Cloud Storage, 2 TB. Family plan. I scrolled back to February. It was there. January. It was there. December. It was there. My heart began to hammer a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I went to the search bar and typed in the merchant name. The charges went back 18 months. 18 months of paying $30 a month for a cloud storage plan I didn't use. I logged into the provider's website using my email. The dashboard loaded. Storage used 1.8 TB of 2 TB. User Logan Boyd. It was Logan's backup. His entire digital life, his photos, his pirated movies, his work files, his video game saves was sitting on a server that I was paying for. I kept scrolling through my statement. I found a subscription for a premium music streaming service, $14 a month. The account name Boyd Family. I found a monthly charge for a business toolkit app that offered resume templates and LinkedIn analytics, $19 a month. I did the math on a piece of scrap paper. Between the storage, the music, and the business tools, I was paying roughly $65 a month for digital luxuries I didn't use. Over the last year and a half, I had subsidized over $1,000 of their entertainment and convenience. $1,000. That was 2 months of rent in my basement. That was actual food instead of instant noodles. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. I wanted to cancel them right then. My finger hovered over the cancel subscription button, but then I stopped. A cold, dark thought entered my mind. If I canceled them now, it would just be an annoyance. They would call. They would yell. They would put it on another card. It would be a glitch in their matrix. No, I needed to wait. I needed to choose the moment when the silence would hurt the most. April arrived, bringing with it the thaw and the senior design showcase. This was the culmination of my entire degree. For 4 years, I had worked toward this night. My project, a user interface system for accessible banking, had been selected as a finalist for the department award. It was a black-tie event. There would be industry recruiters, professors, and families. Every student in my cohort was buzzing about who was coming. "My parents are flying in from Ohio," one girl said. "My dad is bringing my grandmother," said another. I created a digital invitation. It was beautiful, designed with the same care I put into my work. It had the date, the time, and a link to the live stream for those who couldn't make it. I sent it to the family group chat. "Haley, hey everyone. The senior showcase is next Saturday. My project is a finalist for the top prize. I would love it if you could make it. But if not, here's the stream link." I watched the chat bubble. Logan read it. Dad read it. Mom read it. 5 minutes passed. Then, a notification. Mom reacted to the message with a thumbs up emoji. That was it. No text. No congratulations. No, we will check our calendar. Just a yellow hand. A generic acknowledgement that I had spoken, equivalent to how one might acknowledge a spam email. 2 days later, Kelsey sent a message in the same chat. "Prom dress shopping this weekend. Need opinions immediately." The chat exploded. Mom sent 3 heart emojis. Dad asked how much money she needed. Logan made a joke about her date. My invitation was buried under a landslide of tool and teenage vanity. I didn't bring it up again. I focused on my presentation. I focused on the code. I focused on the way the interface flowed, making sure it was perfect. I worked until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. The night before the showcase, I sat in my room, staring at my dress. It was a simple black dress I had bought at a thrift store and tailored myself. I looked at the phone. I knew the answer. I knew it in my bones. But the inner child in me, the stupid, hopeful little girl who used to wait by the window, needed to hear them say it. I dialed my mother. She answered on the second ring, sounding distracted. "Hello, Haley." "Make it quick. I'm making dinner." "Hi, Mom," I said. "I was just calling to see, well, the showcase is tomorrow. I didn't know if you guys were planning to drive out or maybe fly in last minute. I have reserved seats under my name." There was a pause. I heard the sound of a pot lid clattering. "Oh, Haley," she sighed. It was a heavy, burdened sound. "Honey, you know that is a long trip, and honestly, it is just such bad timing." "It is my graduation showcase," I said. "It happens once." I know, but Logan has that networking golf thing on Sunday morning. He needs the car to get his clubs out to the course, and your father is using the SUV for the hardware store run. We just can't spare the vehicles right now." I gripped the phone tighter. "The car," I repeated. "You aren't coming because Logan needs the car for golf. It is a networking event. Haley, it is important for his career. He meets potential clients there. You have to understand. We can't just drop everything and fly to Denver for a school project. We are proud of you. Obviously. But be realistic." "Right," I said. My voice was hollow. "Realistic. "Send us pictures," she said. "Oh, and before I forget, did you pay the phone bill? I got a text saying it is due." "I will handle it," I said. "Thanks. Love you. Bye." The line went dead. The next evening, the university ballroom was a sea of velvet and camera flashes. The air smelled of expensive perfume and anticipation. I stood by my display, explaining my interface to a judge with a clipboard. I smiled. I answered questions. I shook hands. When the ceremony began, I sat in the front row with the other finalists. I listened to the dean speak about the future of design, about how the people in this room were going to change the world. "And the winner of the Senior Design Excellence Award," the dean announced, opening the envelope. "For her innovative work in accessible financial systems, Haley Boyd." The room erupted in applause. I stood up. The spotlight hit me, blinding and warm. I walked up the stairs to the stage. I accepted the heavy glass trophy. I shook the dean's hand. "Look out at your audience," the dean whispered kindly. "Soak it in." I turned to face the crowd. I saw hundreds of faces. I saw parents wiping away tears. I saw siblings cheering. I saw fathers holding up phones to record the moment. And then I looked at the third row. Center left, there were 4 empty chairs. I had reserved them. I had put little "reserved for Boyd family" signs on them, just in case. They sat there, gaping and vacant, like missing teeth in a smile. The applause washed over me, but I felt nothing. I felt a coldness that started in my chest and spread to my limbs, a numbness that was absolute. The wind from O'Hare was back, blowing through the ballroom, freezing the tears before they could form in my eyes. I smiled for the camera. I held the trophy high, but inside, the last tether had snapped. After the ceremony, I went to the reception. I accepted free champagne I wasn't supposed to drink. I let my professors congratulate me. I felt like an actor playing a role. I checked my phone. Maybe they were watching the stream. Maybe they saw me win. There was one text message from Mom. "Don't forget to fix Logan's login. He says the cloud is full and he can't upload his weekend photos." I stared at the screen. I had just won the highest honor in my program. I was standing in a ballroom in a thrift store dress, holding a trophy that validated 4 years of struggle. And my mother was texting me to troubleshoot my brother's digital hoarding. They didn't see me. They never saw me. To them, I was not a person. I was a password manager. I was a tech support line. I was a credit card number that never complained. I walked out of the ballroom. I didn't go to the after party. I took the bus back to my basement apartment. I sat down at my wobbly desk, still wearing my dress. I placed the glass trophy next to my laptop. It caught the light of the desk lamp, sharp and jagged. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the receipts note on my phone. I scrolled to the bottom. Then, I opened a new tab. I went to the cloud storage provider first. Account settings, manage subscription, cancel immediately. A warning popped up. Warning: canceling will reduce storage to 5 GB. Data exceeding this limit will be deleted in 24 hours. I clicked confirm. I went to the music streaming service. Account Boyd family, edit plan. Remove member Mom, remove member Dad. Remove member Kelsey, remove member Logan. Change plan to individual student. I clicked save. I went to the business tools site. Cancel subscription. Reason for leaving. I am not the user. I logged into the phone carrier website. I had been on their family plan, but I had been the one managing the online access because they were all tech illiterate. I looked at the bill. It was auto-paid from my father's card, but my number was listed as an add-on. I initiated a transfer of service for my number to a cheap, prepaid carrier. Then, I went to the streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, HBO, change password, sign out of all devices. I typed in a new password, a complex string of random characters that had no birthday, no pet name, no anniversary, a password that was mine alone. I sat back in my chair. My screen was glowing in the dark room. One by one, the confirmation emails started to roll in. "We are sorry to see you go. Your subscription has been canceled? Password changed successfully. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was lighter than that. It was the feeling of dropping a heavy backpack after hiking for miles. They didn't remember me. They remembered my utility. They remembered that I made their lives frictionless. They remembered that I was the one who kept the digital lights on. Well, the power was out now. I closed my laptop. The fan whirred to a stop. The room was silent. I looked at the trophy again. It was the only thing in the room that reflected any light. "Congratulations, Haley," I whispered to the empty room. I went to sleep. It was the best sleep I had had in years. It started with a shaky hand and a ring light I had bought at a garage sale for $5. It was 3 days after the showcase. 3 days since I had severed the digital umbilical cords connecting me to the Boyd family mainframe. The silence from Milwaukee was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the pressure drop before a tornado. I knew they were noticing. I knew the password incorrect screens were popping up on their televisions and phones. I knew the confusion was turning into irritation, which would soon calcify into rage. I was sitting on the floor of my basement room, leaning against the cold drywall. My laptop was open, displaying a new freelance job board I had signed up for. But my mind was stuck on the image of those 4 empty chairs in the ballroom. I opened the TikTok app. I had an account, but it was a ghost town, just a few videos of design renderings and coffee art. I pressed the plus sign. I flipped the camera to face me. I did not put on a filter. I did not fix my hair, which was pulled back in a messy bun. I looked tired. I looked exactly like what I was, a 19-year-old girl who was realizing she was entirely alone in the world. I pressed record. "Hi," I said to the camera. My voice trembled, so I cleared my throat and started again. "My name is Haley. Last December, my family forgot I was at the airport. I called them 12 times. No one answered because they were throwing a party for my brother. When I finally got home, my mom told me I was being dramatic. I took a breath. Yesterday, I won a National Design Award. They didn't come because my brother needed the car for golf. But 10 minutes after the ceremony, my mom texted me, not to say congratulations, but to ask me to fix my brother's Netflix password. I looked directly into the lens. I have paid their phone bills. I have managed their cloud storage. I have been their tech support, their emotional punching bag, and their retirement plan. But today, I cut them off. I am 19. I have $200 to my name. And I am terrified. But I think I am finally free. I stopped recording. I added a simple caption. My family left me at O'Hare, but still expected me to pay their bills. I added the hashtags toxic family, glass child, and boundaries. I hovered over the post button. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. If I posted this, there was no going back. This wasn't a private rebellion like changing a password. This was a declaration of war. I closed my eyes and tapped the screen. I threw the phone onto my mattress and went for a walk. I walked for 2 hours, circling the campus, breathing in the cold mountain air, trying to outpace my own anxiety. When I came back, I forced myself to shower, to eat a piece of toast, to do anything but look at the phone. I fell asleep around 2 in the morning. When I woke up, my phone was hot. It wasn't just warm. It was physically radiating heat from the nightstand. I touched the screen, and it didn't wake up immediately because the processor was overloaded. When it finally flickered to life, the notifications weren't a list. They were a solid block of text that was moving so fast I couldn't read it. 99 plus. Likes, 99 plus comments, 99 plus. New followers. I opened the app. The video had 3.2 million views. I sat up in bed, gasping for air. 3 million people. That was the population of a small country. I opened the comments. I expected hate. I expected people to tell me I was ungrateful, just like my mother did. I expected the internet to side with the parents. Instead, I saw a tidal wave of validation. User Sound782. This is me. I am 40 and I am just realizing I was the Haley of my family. Sarah J. The glass child syndrome is real. They look right through you to see the golden child. I am so sorry. Honey. Mike. Design, you won a national award. Drop your portfolio link. Seriously. Contact Queen. The fact that you cut the subscriptions is the level of petty I aspire to. Please tell us exactly how you did it. I scrolled and scrolled. Thousands of strangers were offering me the hugs my mother had withheld. Thousands of people were angry for me. It was disorienting. I had spent my life believing I was the problem, the squeaky wheel, the drama queen. And here were 3 million people telling me that the machine was broken, not the wheel. I didn't stop. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a strange, intoxicating mix of vindication and opportunity. I set up my phone again. This time, I didn't shake. I started a series. I called it Receipts Anonymous. I didn't use real names. I didn't say Diane or Logan. I just told the stories. I told the story about the savings account theft. I told the story about the time Logan crashed his car and Dad blamed the icy road. But when I got a flat tire, I was irresponsible. I read the text messages verbatim, putting them on the screen with the names blacked out. Text from Mother. We need to transfer the title of your car to your brother for insurance reasons. You can still drive it when he isn't using it. I posted it. Within an hour. A creator named Dr. Aris, a clinical psychologist with 5 million followers, stitched my video. I watched it. My breath held tight. Dr. Aris sat in a comfortable armchair, looking kind and serious. What you are watching here, he said, pointing to my video, is a textbook example of family scapegoating dynamics. The daughter is the identified patient, the one who carries the emotional burden so the others can remain comfortable. Notice how the financial abuse is justified as family investment. This is not normal. This is exploitation. Haley, if you are watching this, you are not crazy. You are escaping. His video went viral. My follower count jumped from 50,000 to 200,000 in an afternoon. But it wasn't just internet points, it was the bio link. I had put my portfolio website in my bio, mostly out of habit. By that evening, my email inbox, usually a graveyard of spam and university alerts, dinged. Then it dinged again and again. Subject: freelance web design inquiry. Subject: branding for a startup. Love your style. Subject: can you design a logo? Saw your TikTok. I clicked on the first one. It was from a small coffee roaster in Seattle. Hi, Haley. Saw your portfolio via TikTok. We love the accessible interface work you did. We need a new landing page. Budget is $2,000. Are you available? $2,000. I stared at the number. My mother had taken $4,000 from me and called it a loan. Here was a stranger offering me half of that just to do a job I loved for a week. I typed back, I am available. I spent the next 3 days in a fever state of work. I designed the landing page. I created a brand kit for a candle company in Austin. I revamped a resume for a woman in London. When the first payment hit my Stripe account, $500 as a deposit, I cried. I didn't cry at the airport. I didn't cry when I saw the empty chairs. But I cried looking at that notification on my phone. Deposit received, $500. It was mine. No one could claim it was for Logan. No one could guilt me into transferring it. It was the first pure thing I had ever owned. The momentum kept building. The comments on my videos kept asking for more advice. How do you handle the guilt? How do you separate your finances? How do you stop waiting for them to call? I realized I couldn't answer them all in 60-second clips. I looked at my closet. It was full of clothes I barely wore. I pushed the hangers aside. I took the pillows from my bed and lined the walls to dampen the echo. I brought my laptop inside and sat on the floor with my headphones. I recorded the first episode of a podcast. I called it Missed Calls. Welcome to Missed Calls, I said into the microphone, my voice echoing slightly in the small space. I'm Haley. This is a show about the calls we stop answering. It is about the moment you realize that being the good kid is just another way of saying you are the backup plan. Today, we are talking about financial boundaries and why your money is not a family resource. I uploaded it to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I linked it in my TikTok. It charted in the society culture category within 24 hours. I was living two lives. In one, I was a student eating ramen in a basement. In the other, I was becoming a voice for a generation of kids who felt like utility players in their own families. The irony was sharp enough to bleed. Strangers were sending me fan art. Strangers were Venmoing me $5 for coffee. Strangers were writing me essays about how I saved their lives and my family. They were silent, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a predator assessing a new threat. I hadn't blocked them yet. I needed to see the incoming fire, but I had muted their notifications. I checked my messages one evening after finishing a logo design. Logan, 3 days ago. Dude, why is my Dropbox locked? I have a presentation. Mom. 2 days ago, Haley. Pick up. This is ridiculous. Your aunt saw some video. Call me immediately. Dad. Yesterday, we need to discuss the phone bill. It has a termination fee. They hadn't seen the viral videos yet. Not really. They had heard whispers. They knew something was wrong because the services were off. But they didn't know the scale of it. They didn't know that 3 million people knew about the airport. I felt a strange sense of power. For the first time, I controlled the flow of information. I controlled the narrative. I opened the Notes app on my phone. I went to the Receipts folder. I typed a new header at the bottom. Exit plan. I made a list. It wasn't a wish list anymore. It was a strategy. Goal 1. Save $10,000. Current status, 2,500. Goal 2. Graduate with honors. Current status. On track. Goal 3. Secure a full-time job with health insurance, so I never have to ask Dad for a doctor's visit again. Goal 4. Move to a building with a doorman, or at least a security code they don't know, and then I added a rule for myself. Rule number 1. No negotiation. Access to me is a privilege, not a birthright. If they want to be in my life, they apply like everyone else. I looked at the screen. The blue light illuminated the dark closet. I felt stronger than I had ever felt. The pain was still there, the ache of knowing my mother loved her image more than she loved me. But it was different now. It was like a scar tissue forming. It was tough. It was protective. I had turned my trauma into a business model. I had turned my neglect into a brand. And for the first time in 19 years, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see Logan's sister. I didn't see Diane's daughter. I saw Haley, and she was doing just fine. I closed the laptop and walked out of the closet. My phone buzzed on the desk. A new email from Holloway Pike Solutions. Subject interview request. Junior UX designer. I smiled. It was a real company, a big one, the kind of place Logan would kill to work at, but couldn't, because he didn't have the skills. I replied. I would be delighted to interview. The game had changed. I wasn't waiting on the curb anymore. I was driving the car, and I wasn't looking in the rearview mirror. The ripples of my digital rebellion took about 2 weeks to travel from the internet ether to the manicured streets of Milwaukee, but when they arrived, they hit with the force of a structural failure. I wasn't there to see it. Of course, I was 1,000 miles away in Denver, meticulously crafting a portfolio for my upcoming interview with Holloway and Pike Solutions. But thanks to the small-town nature of suburban gossip and a few old high school friends who were all too eager to keep me in the loop via direct messages, I had a front-row seat to the slow disintegration of the Boyd family image. It started, predictably, at the country club. My mother, Diane, lived for her Tuesday tennis league. It was less about the sport and more about the social currency exchanged over iced tea afterwards. According to Sarah, a girl I grew up with whose mom was in the same league, the atmosphere shifted the moment Diane walked onto the court. Usually, Diane held court. She would brag about Logan's promotion, about the investments the family was making, about how perfect their life was. But this Tuesday was different. A woman named Carol, who had always been a frenemy of my mother's, leaned in during the water break. "Diane," Carol reportedly said, loud enough for the next court to hear. I saw the most disturbing video on TikTok yesterday. It was about a girl left at O'Hare by her family. The details well. They sounded so familiar. Is that Haley's story? My mother froze. She laughed. A brittle, high-pitched sound. Oh, you know the internet. Carol. People make things up for attention. Haley is doing wonderful. She just won an award. Right, Carol pressed. But the video mentioned the brother needing the car for golf on the day of the award. Didn't Logan play with my husband that Sunday? The silence that followed was apparently deafening. My mother went into damage control mode immediately. That night, I saw the notification pop up on Facebook. She had posted a status update, set to public, with a background of storm clouds. It is heartbreaking when you sacrifice everything for your children, only to have them rewrite history for 5 minutes of fame. Ungrateful kids are the hardest cross to bear. Family values, truth will out. She expected sympathy. She expected the chorus of "You're a saint, Diane" comments she usually farmed. Instead, a woman who had been my Girl Scout troop leader 10 years ago commented, "Diane, didn't Haley get a full academic scholarship? I thought she was paying her own way through school." Another neighbor chimed in. "Wait, is the airport story true? I saw you guys hosting a party that night." My mother deleted the post within an hour, but screenshots live forever, while Diane was fighting a losing battle on Facebook. Logan was facing a much more tangible nightmare at his office. For years, I had been Logan's secret weapon, since high school. I had edited his essays, formatted his spreadsheets, and designed his presentations. When he got the job at the logistics firm, he would email me raw data at midnight, and I would send back polished, professional slide decks by 6 in the morning. He never paid me. He barely thanked me. He just assumed that my talent was his asset. But I had cut him off 2 days ago. Logan had a quarterly review presentation. I knew this because he had emailed me 5 times the night before. The subject lines escalating from "Hey, quick favor" to "Haley, pick up or I am screwed." I hadn't picked up. According to a text I got from an old friend who interned at his company, the presentation was a disaster. Logan had tried to do the slides himself. He used mismatched fonts. The graphs were blurry screenshots. The formatting was all over the place, but the humiliation didn't stop at bad design. During the meeting, Logan had apparently tried to use a specific phrase I often used in my receipts videos, something about efficiency metrics in a toxic system. He thought he was sounding smart. A junior analyst in the back of the room, someone young, someone who clearly spent time on TikTok, snickered. "Hey Logan," the guy had called out during the Q&A. "Did you get that line from the airport girl video, the one about the family who exploits their daughter?" The room went quiet. The vice president of HR, a stern woman who didn't tolerate nonsense, looked up from her notes. "What is he talking about, Logan?" she asked. "Nothing," Logan stammered. "Just a meme. Actually," the analyst continued, "merciless. The slide design from his last quarter looks identical to the portfolio linked in that girl's bio. It is weird, right? It is almost like the quality dropped off a cliff the moment she posted that she was cutting her family off." The HR representative didn't laugh. She just made a note on her pad. Later that afternoon, Logan was called into a meeting to discuss intellectual property and authentic work output. He didn't lose his job, not yet, but the golden halo was tarnished. He was no longer the prodigy. He was the guy who might have been outsourcing his competence to his little sister. Then came Kelsey. My little sister was the least malicious of them, but she was also the most dependent. She had grown up watching me fix everything, so she never learned how to hold a hammer. It was Wednesday night. I was working on a wireframe for a freelance client, listening to a lo-fi playlist, when my phone buzzed. Kelsey. "Hey, I am freaking out." I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. Kelsey. "The deadline for the art school portfolio is tomorrow at midnight. I have the drawings, but I don't know how to scan them properly or put them into the PDF format they want. The file size keeps being too big. Kelsey, please. Hales. Mom is screaming at Dad about money and Logan is in a mood. I can't ask them. You always do this for me." My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I knew exactly how to fix her problem. It would take me 10 minutes. I could tell her to adjust the DPI settings. I could tell her to use a compression tool. I could remotely log in and do it for her. I remembered being 16. I remembered the panic of deadlines. A part of me, the part that had been trained to be the family martyr, screamed at me to help her. It's just Kelsey. She didn't steal the money, but she had eaten the food bought with my money. She had watched them ignore my calls. She had walked past me at the party and asked for a charger. She was a beneficiary of the system that was crushing me. If I did this for her, I was teaching her that she didn't need to learn. I was teaching her that Haley would always be the safety net. I put the phone face down on the desk. I turned the volume up on my music. I went back to my wireframe. I did not reply. The next morning, I saw a tweet from Kelsey. So much for sisters supporting sisters. Thanks for nothing. She didn't submit the portfolio on time. She missed the deadline for her top choice school. It was harsh. It was brutal. But for the first time in her life, Kelsey had to sit with the consequences of her own inaction. By Friday, the domestic ecosystem of the Boyd household was in full collapse. It wasn't just the big things. It was the death by 1,000 cuts. Without me managing the autopay, the internet had been throttled because the card on file had expired and no one noticed the emails. The streaming services were gone, leaving them with static silence in the evenings. The business tools subscription I canceled meant Dad lost access to his premium LinkedIn features right when he was trying to recruit a new partner. They were realizing that the invisible hand that kept their lives running smoothly was actually my hand, and I had taken it back. My phone rang at 7 in the evening. It was my mother. I looked at it. I had been ignoring them for weeks. But I felt a sudden, cold curiosity. I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear the tone of voice of a woman who was realizing she was no longer in charge. I picked up. Hello? Haley? Her voice was shrill, tight with stress. Finally. Do you have any idea what is going on here? I am fine. Thanks for asking, I said calmly. Don't get smart with me, she snapped. The internet is down. Logan is being investigated at work because of some rumors you started. People at the club are looking at me like I'm a criminal, and Kelsey is crying in her room because she missed her application deadline. Are you happy? Are you happy that you are ruining this family? I sat back in my cheap desk chair. I looked around my tiny room. It was small, but it was paid for. The food in the fridge was mine. The quiet was mine. I am not ruining anything, Mom, I said. I am just not fixing it anymore. It is the same thing, she shouted. We are a family. You help the family. Why is everything suddenly falling apart? Because I stopped holding it up, I said. The words came out simple and absolute. I was the foundation you built everything on, Mom, but you treated me like the basement. Now the floor is caving in. That is not my fault. That is gravity. You are so selfish, she hissed. After everything we gave you, a roof over your head, clothes on your back. You took my college fund, I reminded her. You left me at the airport. You forgot my existence until you needed a password. That isn't giving, Mom. That is taking. We will fix this, she threatened. We will issue a statement. We will tell people the truth about how unstable you are. Go ahead, I said. I have the receipts. I have the bank statements. I have the call logs. I have the emails where Logan asked me to do his work. If you want to make this a public fight, I promise you, I have more ammunition. There was silence on the other end. For the first time, she realized she couldn't bully me. I wasn't 19 and scared anymore. I was independent and armed with evidence. Haley, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You are making a mistake. You need us. No, I said. I really don't. I hung up. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of a clean break. I blocked her number. I blocked Dad. I blocked Logan. I blocked Kelsey. I sat in the silence for a moment, letting the weight of what I had done settle. I had effectively orphaned myself. It should have felt tragic. Instead, it felt like I had just cut away a gangrenous limb. My laptop pinged with a new email notification. I turned to the screen, expecting another freelance inquiry or maybe a bill. It was from the domain Holloway Pike, com. Subject interview. Confirmation. Junior UX Designer role. Dear Ms. Boyd, we have reviewed your portfolio and your online case studies. We are incredibly impressed by your work on accessible financial interfaces. Your ability to translate complex systems into user-friendly designs is exactly what we are looking for. We would like to fly you out for a final round of interviews at our Denver headquarters next Tuesday. Please let us know if you are available. I read the email 3 times. Holloway and Pike. It was a Tier 1 tech consultancy. Starting salaries for juniors were around $80,000 a year. It came with full benefits, stock options, and a signing bonus. This was the door, the real door. If I got this job, I wouldn't just be surviving, I would be thriving. I would be making more money at 22 than my father made at 40. I would have health insurance that didn't depend on his employment. I would have a career that was entirely 100% mine. I thought about Logan, sweating in his office, unable to make a slide deck. I thought about my mother, desperately trying to spin a narrative that no longer held water. I thought about Kelsey, missing deadlines because she waited for a savior who wasn't coming. They were drowning in the shallow end of the pool because they refused to learn how to swim. I typed my reply. I am available. Thank you for the opportunity. I hit send. I stood up and walked to the small window of my basement apartment. Outside, the Denver sky was a brilliant, bruised purple as the sun went down over the Rockies. It was cold, but inside, I was warm. The family structure had collapsed. The perfect image was shattered, and standing in the rubble, holding the blueprint for a new life, was me. I smiled. It was time to build something that actually had a foundation. The optimism I felt after scheduling the interview with Holloway and Pike was a narcotic. It made me feel invincible, like I had finally outrun the shadow of my family. I spent the weekend looking at apartments online, fantasizing about a space that didn't smell like damp basement and didn't have a shared laundry room where my socks mysteriously vanished. I found it on a Tuesday morning. It was a studio apartment in the Low-High neighborhood of Denver. It was small, only 450 square feet, but it had an exposed brick wall, a window that actually let in sunlight, and a kitchen island that wasn't made of plywood. The rent was $1,400 a month. It was a stretch, but with my freelance income picking up and the prospect of the new job, I knew I could make it work. I filled out the application immediately. I paid the $50 application fee. I uploaded my bank statements, which finally showed a positive balance thanks to the design deposits. I hit submit with a flourish, feeling like I was signing the treaty that ended the war. The rejection email came 4 hours later. I was sitting in a coffee shop, working on a logo, when the notification slid across my screen. Subject application status, Unit 4B, declined. I frowned. I wiped my hands on a napkin and opened the email. Assuming there was a mistake, maybe I had typed my social security number wrong. Maybe the upload had failed. Dear Ms. Boyd, thank you for your interest in the Low-High Lofts. Unfortunately, we are unable to approve your application at this time. Our leasing policy requires a minimum credit score of 650. Your current credit report indicates a score of 580, along with a high debt-to-income ratio due to recent credit utilization. If you believe this is an error, please contact TransUnion directly. I stared at the number. 580. That was impossible. I was 19. I had one credit card, a student starter card with a limit of $500, which I paid off in full every single month. I had never missed a payment. I had no car loan. I had no mortgage. My student loans were in deferment until graduation. My credit score should have been in the 700s. A cold, prickly sensation started at the base of my neck. It was the same feeling I had when I looked at the college fund account and saw the missing money. But this was worse. That was theft of cash. This was theft of my name. I packed up my laptop. I couldn't do this in public. I needed to be somewhere private. I practically ran back to my basement apartment, ignoring the burning in my lungs. I threw my bag on the floor and opened my laptop. My hands were shaking so badly I had to type my password twice. I went to Annual Credit Report, COM. I requested my file from Experian. I answered the security questions. What is the make of your vehicle? None. Which of these addresses have you lived at 142 Maple Drive? Milwaukee. The report generated. A spinning wheel on the screen mocked me for 10 agonizing seconds. Then, the PDF opened. I scrolled past my student loans. I scrolled past my little $500 student card, and there they were. 2 red flags waving in the digital wind. Account name, Chase Sapphire Preferred. Status open. Balance, $8,432. Date opened, December 22nd. Account name, Affirm Financing. Status open. Balance, $2,100. Merchant Herman Miller Furniture. I stopped breathing. December 22nd. 3 days after the airport. 3 days after I walked into that house and saw the banner for Logan. I clicked on the details for the credit card. I needed to see the address. I needed to see where the statements were going. Billing address, 142 Maple Drive, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, my parents' house. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to lean over the side of my bed, gasping for air. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a stranger. Identity theft usually comes from Russia or a dark web hacker. Mine came from the master bedroom of the house I grew up in. I sat up. I forced myself to drink a sip of water. I couldn't panic. Panic was what they expected. Panic was what made me dramatic. I needed to be forensic. I looked at the Affirm loan. $2,000 for furniture. I remembered seeing a new ergonomic gaming chair in Logan's room when I went to get my suitcase. I remembered him bragging about his new office setup for the VP role. He was sitting on my credit score. I picked up my phone. I didn't call my mother. Not yet. I called the bank first. I spent 40 minutes on hold, listening to smooth jazz that sounded like a funeral dirge. Finally, a woman named Patricia answered. Fraud Department, this is Patricia. How can I help you? Hi, I said. My voice was eerily calm. I am looking at my credit report. There is a card here with a balance of $8,000. I did not open it. Okay, honey, Patricia said, her voice softening. Let's take a look. Can you verify your full social? I gave her the numbers. And your mother's maiden name? Miller. Okay, I see the account here. It was opened online on December 22nd. The verification was done via email. What email was used? I asked. There was a pause. For security, I can only give you the first few letters. Does it start with Haley College Prep? I asked. Yes, Patricia said. That is the one. I closed my eyes. Haley College Prep Gmail.com. It was an email address my mother had created for me when I was a junior in high school. She said it was to help me manage my applications and scholarship offers. She had the password. She had set it up on her iPad. I hadn't used that email in 2 years. Patricia, I said, I need to dispute this. That is not my email anymore. I did not authorize this. I understand, she said. We can freeze the card immediately. We will open an investigation. But I have to ask, do you know who might have had access to your social security number and that email address? I looked at the wall of my basement room. I looked at the water stains on the ceiling. Yes, I said. I know exactly who it was. If it is a family member, Patricia said, her voice taking on a warning tone, you should know that for us to discharge the debt as fraud, you will likely need to file a police report. Otherwise, the bank considers it a civil matter between authorized parties. A police report, that was the line. That was the nuclear option. If I filed a police report, it wasn't just a family squabble anymore. It was a felony. It was prison time. It was a criminal record. I understand, I said. Freeze the card. Send me the affidavit. I hung up. I sat there for 10 minutes. I thought about the time my mother made me soup when I had the flu in 3rd grade. I thought about the time my father taught me to ride a bike. I tried to find the love. I tried to find the reason to protect them. But then I thought about the airport. I thought about the wind. I thought about the stop making drama text. I thought about the rejection email from the apartment complex. They hadn't just neglected me. They had actively intentionally sabotaged my future to fund their present. They had looked at my credit, my good name, my financial identity, and decided it was a resource they were entitled to harvest. I unblocked my mother's number. I dialed. She picked up on the first ring, which meant she was holding the phone. Haley. She sounded breathless. Oh, thank God. I have been trying to call you. I saw that you blocked us. You can't just— Mom, I interrupted. What? Did you use my name? The question hung in the air, heavy and absolute. I didn't yell it. I asked it with the flat curiosity of a judge asking a defendant for a plea. I don't know what you are talking about, she said, but the speed of her answer gave her away. It was a reflex, not a truth. I am looking at my credit report. Mom, I said, there is a Chase Sapphire card with $8,000 on it. There is a Herman Miller loan for Logan's chair. The verification email was the old college prep account you control. Silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end. I could hear the faint sound of the television in the background. Mom, I said again, did you open these accounts? We were going to fix it, she blurted out. My stomach dropped. There it was, the confession. Fix it, I repeated. You committed identity theft to fix what? Logan needed a bridge, she said, her voice rising in that frantic, victimized pitch she used when she was cornered. The promotion came with expenses. Haley, he had to buy new suits. He had to furnish the home office. The signing bonus hadn't cleared yet. We were just liquid poor for a few weeks. We were going to pay it off before you even noticed. Before I noticed, I laughed. A harsh, jagged sound. Mom, you tanked my credit score. I just got denied for an apartment. I am living in a basement because of you. Don't be dramatic, she said instinctively. It is just a number. We can pay it down. Your father is closing a deal next month. We will transfer the money. Just don't make a scene about this. Make a scene. I felt the heat rising in my face, but I pushed it down. I needed to be cold. You committed a felony. We are your family, she screamed. You don't use words like felony with your mother. We raised you. We fed you, so we used your credit for a month, so what? You weren't using it. You are a student. Logan has a career to protect. And I don't, I asked softly. I don't have a life. You are young, she said dismissively. You can bounce back. Logan is at a critical juncture. If he showed up to that job in cheap suits, he would have been laughed out of the boardroom. We did what we had to do for the family. I am part of the family, I said. Then act like it, she retorted. Stop checking your little reports and let us handle the finances. We know what we are doing. I looked at the $8,000 balance again. Trips to restaurants, gas stations, a charge for a spa in downtown Milwaukee, a charge for a liquor store. They weren't just buying suits. They were living their perfect life on my credit because they were broke. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They weren't rich. They were drowning, and they were using me as a life raft. Okay, I said. Okay. She sounded relieved. Good. I knew you would be reasonable. Just unblock us. Haley, we need to coordinate the payment plan, and maybe you can take down those TikTok videos. People are talking. I said okay, I repeated. As in, I understand now. Understand what? I understand that I am not a daughter to you, I said. I am a line of credit. Haley, stop it. I'm going to hang up now. Mom. Wait. Don't you dare. I pressed the red button. I sat in the silence of my room. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things. I felt a strange, terrifying clarity. They thought I would fold. They thought I would be the good little girl who took the hit to protect the family secret. They banked on my silence. They made a bad investment. I opened a new tab on my laptop. First, I went to the post office website. I rented a P.O. box in Denver. I set up mail forwarding immediately. Nothing, not a letter, not a bill, not a birthday card would ever go to 142 Maple Drive again. Second, I logged into every single email account I had. I changed the passwords. I enabled two-factor authentication. I removed the recovery email that linked back to my father. Third, I went back to the credit bureaus. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. I clicked the button that said, Freeze Credit Report. It meant no one could open a new account in my name. Not me, not Logan, not Diane. And finally, I looked at the affidavit the bank had emailed me. Identity theft report. Did you authorize this debt? No. Do you know the person who committed this fraud? I picked up my digital pen. I could have just checked no and let the bank write it off. I could have let them handle it internally. But if I did that, the debt would just disappear. And my parents would learn nothing. They would do it again, maybe to Kelsey, maybe to me in 5 years. They needed to learn that Haley Boyd was closed for business. I checked the box that said, yes. I wrote down the name, Diane Marie Boyd. I wrote down the address, 142 Maple Drive. I wrote down the relationship mother. I saved the document. I wasn't just leaving them at the airport anymore. I was putting them on the no-fly list. I stood up and walked to the mirror. I looked different. My eyes looked older. The girl who waited on the curb at O'Hare hoping for a ride was dead. The woman looking back at me was ready to burn the bridge while they were still standing on it. I picked up my phone and opened my calendar. I marked the date of my interview with Holloway and Pike. Then, I added a new event for tomorrow morning. 9:00 a.m., police station. I wasn't doing it out of spite. I was doing it for survival. As Dr. Aris had said in his video, boundaries without consequences are just suggestions. I was done making suggestions. The first time I walked into the lobby of Holloway and Pike Solutions as a full-time employee. The air smelled like ozone and expensive coffee. I was wearing a blazer I had bought with my first freelance check, and for the first time in my life, I did not feel like an imposter. I felt like an investment. The onboarding process was a revelation. In the Boyd household, money was a secret weapon used to control or a panic button hit in emergencies. Here, it was a contract. The HR representative, a woman named Linda with kind eyes, slid a piece of paper across the desk. This is your compensation package. Haley, she said. Base salary of $82,000. Signing bonus of $5,000, and here is your benefits enrollment guide. I stared at the number. $82,000. It was more money than I had ever seen in one place. It was freedom. It was a fortress. And the health insurance? I asked, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering. When does that kick in? Day 1. Linda smiled. Here is your temporary card. I took the small piece of paper. It was just cardstock, but it felt heavier than the trophy I had won. It meant that if I got sick, I didn't have to call my father. It meant that if I needed a dentist, I didn't have to beg. It meant my body belonged to me again. My father had called my design work a hobby. He had called my path unstable. 2 weeks into the job, I was assigned to the lead UX team for a major fintech application overhaul. My boss, a senior partner named Marcus, didn't treat me like a kid. He didn't ask me to get coffee. He put my wireframes up on the big screen in the conference room. This, Marcus said, pointing to my user flow diagram, is exactly the kind of intuitive architecture we have been missing. Boyd, good work. You are leading the interface sprint for the mobile wallet. I sat there, holding my stylus, and felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was the absence of anxiety. There was no need to shrink. There was no need to apologize for taking up space. I was being paid to take up space. I was being paid to be smart. My hobby was now generating more revenue in a month than Logan's real career generated in a quarter. While my days were filled with wireframes and stakeholder meetings, my nights were dedicated to a different kind of architecture. The Missed Calls podcast had evolved. It was no longer just me venting about the airport. It had become a war room. I stopped telling sad stories and started giving instructions. Episode 12, I said into the mic one Tuesday night, my voice low and authoritative. The art of the freeze, how to lock your credit before they can ruin it. Tonight, we are talking about the difference between a fraud alert and a credit freeze, and why you need both. The response was different now. The comments weren't just, "I'm sorry." They were, "I did it." They were, "Thank you. I finally moved out." I checked my direct messages. Amidst the hundreds of fan messages, one stood out. It was verified. From a user named Sarah Esk. "Hi Haley. I have been listening to your show. I am a consumer protection attorney in Chicago. I heard your episode about the credit card fraud. If you haven't filed the dispute yet, be careful with the wording on the affidavit. If you say it was a misunderstanding, the bank will deny it. It has to be unauthorized criminal activity. If you need a template for the dispute letter that is legally bulletproof, let me know. Pro bono. I hate bullies." I stared at the screen. A lawyer. A real lawyer was offering to arm me. I accepted. Sarah sent me a packet of documents. They were terrifyingly beautiful. They were cold, precise, and devoid of emotion. They used words like identity theft, unauthorized access, and prosecution. I filled them out. I attached the police report number I had generated the day before. I attached the timeline of events. I attached the IP address logs I had pulled from the email provider, showing the account was accessed from Milwaukee, not Denver. It was a design project. The user experience was, "Convince the bank I am a victim." The interface was irrefutable evidence. I printed the package at the office. It was an inch thick. I mailed it certified. Return receipt requested. 3 days later, the bomb went off in Milwaukee. I knew it happened because my phone, which I kept on Do Not Disturb during work hours, lit up with 17 notifications in the span of 10 minutes. Mom. Voicemail, "Haley, what did you do?" The bank called. "They are talking about an investigation. Call me back right now." Dad voicemail. "You need to withdraw that claim. Do you have any idea what this does to our liquidity? We can work this out." Logan. Text. "You are actually crazy. Mom is crying. Fix this." I sat in my ergonomic office chair, overlooking the Denver skyline. I took a sip of my sparkling water. I did not call them back. I did not text. I opened my email. I composed a new message. To Diane Boyd. Mark Boyd. Logan Boyd. Subject Communication Protocol. I have received your calls. Due to the pending fraud investigation and the legal nature of the dispute regarding the unauthorized accounts opened in my name, I have been advised to cease all verbal communication. If you have anything to say to me, you may put it in writing. Any further attempts to call my personal number will be documented as harassment and added to the case file. Haley. I hit send. It was the coldest thing I had ever done. It was also the most necessary. By forcing them to write, I was stripping them of their weapons. They couldn't use tone. They couldn't use guilt-tripping pauses. They couldn't gaslight me by saying, "I never said that later." If they wrote it, I had it. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was the silence of a siege. They were trapped. If they emailed me admitting they opened the accounts, I had a confession. If they emailed me threatening me, I had harassment. So they stopped. But the consequences didn't stop. Logan was the first to crumble. Without me to manage his digital life, the cracks in his competence were becoming canyons. I heard about it from a mutual friend, a guy named Chris who worked in Logan's building. We met for coffee in Denver when Chris was in town for a conference. "It is bad, Haley," Chris said, wincing as he took a sip of his latte. "Like, really bad. Last week, Logan had to present the Q1 projections. Usually, his decks are slick. This time it looked like a fourth grader made it in paint. White background, black text, typos everywhere. He didn't use the templates I made him, I asked, keeping my face neutral. He couldn't find them. Chris laughed. Apparently, they were on that cloud account you canceled. He stood up there and tried to wing it. He kept saying, and The VP asked him a basic question about the data source, and Logan just froze. He said, "I usually have support staff handle the raw data," the VP said. "Logan, you are the support staff." I felt a dark, sweet satisfaction curl in my stomach. It wasn't gloating. It was justice. For years, Logan had walked around wearing my hard work like a tailored suit. Now he was naked, and everyone could see that the Emperor had no skills. Is he going to be fired? I asked. Probation, Chris said. He is on a performance improvement plan. He has 30 days to prove he can actually do the job. He wouldn't make it. I knew he wouldn't. Logan had never learned to swim because he had spent his whole life standing on my shoulders. Then there was Kelsey. My sister emailed me a week after the written-only rule went into effect. She didn't use the group thread. She emailed me privately. Subject FAFSA. Haley, I know you said to write, I am not asking for money, but the school counselor said I need to fill out the FAFSA for financial aid if I want to go to community college since I missed the art school deadline. Mom and Dad won't give me their tax info. They are screaming about audits. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fill this out. Can you just tell me what line 4B means? I looked at the email. It was the first time Kelsey had ever asked how to do something, rather than asking me to do it for her. I could have ignored it. I could have let her fail to teach her a lesson. But the goal wasn't cruelty. The goal was independence. I didn't do it for her. I didn't ask for her login. I replied, here is a link to a YouTube tutorial that explains the form line by line. You need to demand the tax returns from Dad. Tell him that if you don't file, you don't get aid, and he has to pay tuition out of pocket. He will give them to you. I hit send. I was no longer the mule. I was the guide. If she wanted to walk the path, she had to move her own legs. By the end of my first month at Holloway and Pike, my first full paycheck hit my bank account. I looked at the number on the screen. It was beautiful. After taxes, after the 401k contribution, after the insurance premium, it was still more money than I had ever possessed. I paid my rent. I paid my phone bill. I paid for my groceries. And I had $2,000 left over. I opened a new savings account. It wasn't at the same bank my parents used. It was at a credit union across town. The app asked me to name the goal. Vacation New Car Emergency Fund. I typed in the name. Gate 12. It wasn't a fund for a trip. It was a fund for a promise. Gate 12 was where I stood in the wind. Gate 12 was where I realized I was alone. Gate 12 was the lowest point of my life. I transferred the $2,000 into the account. This money was my never again fund. If I ever got stranded, if I ever got fired, if the world ever turned its back on me, I would have the resources to buy my own ticket. I would never stand on a curb waiting for a car that wasn't coming. I watched the balance settle. Gate 12, $2,000. I closed the laptop. I walked to the mirror in my new apartment, the one I had secured with an extra-large security deposit and a letter of employment from my new firm, bypassing the credit check hurdle. I looked at myself. I was tired. Yes, the legal battle was draining. The emotional toll of cutting off my family was a heavy coat I wore every day, but I was standing on solid ground. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was an email notification. From Chase Fraud Dept. Subject update on your dispute. Dear Miss Boyd, we have received your affidavit and supporting documentation. Based on the evidence provided, we have provisionally credited the $8,000 back to your account while we pursue the responsible party. Pursue the responsible party. It was happening. The machine I had built was working. I wasn't destroying them. I was simply stepping out of the way and letting the consequences find them. I picked up my keys. I was going to buy myself a dinner, a real dinner, sitting at a table for one, paying with a card that had my name on it, and answering to no one. The revenge wasn't in the email I sent. The revenge was in the life I was living. And it tasted sweet. Sunday morning usually tasted like peace. In my new life, the one I had built brick by brick over the last 3 months. Sunday was for sleeping in until 9, for making pour-over coffee in my sun-drenched kitchen, and for reading a book that had absolutely nothing to do with user interface design or family trauma. It was a day of rest, a concept I was only just beginning to understand. But this Sunday, the peace was shattered before I even opened my eyes. It was not a sound that woke me. It was a vibration. My phone, which I had left on the nightstand, was buzzing. It wasn't the rhythmic pulse of a phone call. It was a spasm. One buzz, then another, then 3 in rapid succession, then a continuous, angry hum that rattled the glass of water next to it. I rolled over, blinking against the morning light. and reached for the device. My heart gave a painful thud against my ribs, a conditioned response from years of walking on eggshells. I looked at the screen. 37 notifications. They were all from one contact. Mom. I sat up, the sheets pooling around my waist. The last time I had seen this many notifications was at O'Hare, standing in the freezing wind, desperate for someone to remember I existed. Back then, the screen had been a list of my outgoing desperation. Today, it was a list of their incoming panic. I unlocked the phone. The messages scrolled past my eyes, a chaotic timeline of a family system in total collapse. 7:30 a.m. Haley, pick up. It is an emergency. 7:32 a.m. We need to talk. Right now. 7:35 a.m. The bank just called your father. Why is there a hold on the Sapphire card? 7:40 a.m. Haley, please, we are family. You can't just ignore this. 7:50 a.m. Pick up the phone. You are scaring me. 8:10 a.m. You are ungrateful. After everything we did for you, 8:15 a.m. You are ruining us. Do you hear me? You are destroying this family over a misunderstanding. I read them twice. The progression was textbook. It started with alarm, pivoted to manipulation, shifted to guilt, and finally settled on rage. It was the entire cycle of abuse condensed into 45 minutes of blue text bubbles. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't feel the urge to cry. I felt a cold, clinical curiosity. What had happened? The bank doesn't usually call on Sunday mornings unless the situation is catastrophic. Then I saw the voicemail icon. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear. Haley, my mother's voice cracked through the speaker. She sounded wrecked. She was sobbing, those deep, gasping breaths that used to make me run to get her a glass of water when I was a child. Haley, please call me back. An investigator called the house. They are using words like fraud. You have to tell them it was a mistake. You have to tell them you authorized it. She broke down into tears. But then, I heard it. It was faint, buried under the sound of her weeping, but I had spent the last few months editing audio for my podcast. My ears were tuned to background noise. I heard a whisper. It was sharp and hissed, coming from somewhere in the room with her. Tell her we will pay it back. Ask her what we are going to say to the police. It was my father. Or maybe Logan. It didn't matter. The sobbing wasn't fake. My mother was genuinely terrified. But the performance was directed. She was being coached. They were standing in their kitchen, probably surrounded by granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, workshopping the script that would manipulate me into taking the fall for their felony. I lowered the phone. A shiver went down my spine. But it wasn't fear. It was disgust. It was the final, absolute realization that there was no love in that house, only self-preservation. The dispute I had filed with the help of Sarah, the lawyer, had landed. The bank had looked at the IP logs, looked at the timeline, and realized this wasn't just a billing error. They had escalated it to their fraud division. And because the amount was over $5,000, and because it crossed state lines, my credit was in Denver. The theft was in Milwaukee. It was potentially a federal issue. The perfect name of the Boyd family was not just tarnished, it was on fire. My phone rang in my hand, startling me. The screen flashed Logan. He hadn't called me in 4 months, not since he asked for the password to his cloud storage. I stared at the name. I knew I shouldn't answer. Sarah had told me, written communication only, but I needed to hear it. I needed to hear the tone of his voice to confirm what I suspected. I swiped green. I didn't say hello. I just held the phone to my ear and breathed. Haley. Logan's voice was jagged. He didn't sound like the golden boy anymore. He sounded like a cornered animal. Jesus. Finally. Do you have any idea what you have done? I am recording this call, I said calmly. I wasn't. But in a one-party consent state, the threat was usually enough to strip away the bravado. Stop with the legal crap, he shouted. This isn't a game. Haley, Mom is hyperventilating. Dad is on the phone with his lawyer, but the guy is saying he can't stop a bank investigation once it is flagged as identity theft. You have to call them. I have to call them. I repeated. Yes. Call the bank. Tell them you forgot you gave Mom permission. Tell them it was a miscommunication. We will pay the $8,000. I will transfer it today. Just make it go away. You want me to lie to a federal investigator, I said. You want me to commit perjury to cover up your theft. It wasn't theft, Logan screamed. It was a bridge loan. We were going to pay it back. Why do you have to be so vicious? You are treating us like criminals. If the shoe fits, Logan. You are such a bitch, he spat out. You think you are so high and mighty with your little podcast and your new job? You are nothing without this family. You are going to send Mom to jail. Is that what you want? You want to see Mom in handcuffs because you are petty about a few $1,000s. There it was, the entitlement, the utter lack of accountability. He truly believed that my role in the universe was to absorb the impact of their mistakes. He believed I was the designated airbag for the Boyd family crash. I don't want Mom in jail, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I just don't want her in my wallet. There is a difference. Fix this. Haley, he demanded, his voice dropping to a growl. Fix it now. I closed my eyes. For 19 years. Fix this, Haley, had been the soundtrack of my life. Fix the internet. Fix the printer. Fix the dinner. Fix the mood. I opened my eyes. The sun was fully up now, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air of my apartment. No, I said. What? I said no. I am not fixing it. You have to. But, I interrupted, I will talk to you, not on the phone, not via text, face to face. We are in Milwaukee, he said. I know where you are, but if you want to save yourself, you will come to me, or at least, meet me halfway. I checked the time. It was 9 a.m. Meet me in Chicago, I said. 1 hour and 30 minutes. If you leave now, you can make it. Chicago, he stammered. Why Chicago? Because that is where you left me, I said. I hung up before he could argue. I didn't wait for a confirmation. I knew they would come. Desperation is a powerful fuel, much stronger than love. They were terrified of the consequences, and they believed, arrogantly and foolishly, that if they could just get me in a room, they could bully me back into submission. They thought they could use the old triggers, the tears, the shouting, the family-first rhetoric to force me to recant the affidavit. I got out of bed. I showered. I didn't dress for comfort. I dressed for war. I put on my best dark jeans, boots, and the leather jacket I had bought to celebrate my promotion. I pulled my hair back tight. I walked to the kitchen and drank a glass of water. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. It was the feeling of a soldier walking toward the front line knowing the enemy is out of ammunition. My phone buzzed again. It was a picture message from Mom. It was a blurry photo taken from the passenger seat of a moving car. It showed the green highway sign on Interstate 94. Chicago, 65 miles. Underneath. She had typed, "We are coming. Please don't leave." I stared at the photo. Please don't leave. The irony was so sharp it almost drew blood. 4 months ago, I had stood on a curb praying for them to come. I had watched taillights fade into the distance. I had begged the universe for them not to leave me. Now they were breaking speed limits to get to me, but they weren't coming for Haley. They were coming for the plaintiff. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door. The drive to the meeting point was a blur. I didn't listen to music. I drove in silence, rehearsing what I needed to say. I wasn't going there to accept an apology, because I knew one wasn't coming. An apology requires remorse, and they only had regret. I pulled into the parking lot of the coffee shop I had chosen. It wasn't inside the airport. I couldn't get past security without a ticket, but it was just off the access road to O'Hare. It was a place filled with travelers, people with suitcases, people checking flight boards, people saying hello and goodbye. The sound of jet engines roared overhead, a constant, thundering reminder of where this had all begun. I walked inside. The smell of roasted coffee and sanitizer hit me. I ordered a black coffee. I found a table in the back, far enough from the door to see who was coming, but close enough to the exit that I could leave if I needed to. I sat down. I placed my phone on the table. Face up. I opened the folder I had brought with me. Inside were copies of the credit report, the affidavit, and the timeline I had sent to the bank. I wasn't hiding anything. Transparency was my weapon. I watched the door. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Then, I saw them. The automatic doors slid open. My mother walked in first. She looked smaller than I remembered. She was wearing sunglasses, even though it was overcast outside, likely to hide swollen eyes. Her hair, usually perfectly coiffed, was pulled back in a messy clip. She was clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. My father followed her. He looked aged. His shoulders were slumped, and his face was red, a map of high blood pressure and suppressed rage. He was scanning the room frantically. Logan came last. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a hoodie and jeans, looking like the college student he still mentally was. He looked exhausted, his eyes dark and restless. They looked like refugees from a disaster of their own making. My mother saw me. She stopped. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes locked onto mine. For a second, I saw the flash of the mother I used to want, the one who would run over and hug me, the one who would say, "I missed you." But she didn't run. She hesitated. She looked at Dad. He gave a sharp nod. They walked toward my table. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I sat with my hands folded on top of the file folder, my back straight, my feet planted firmly on the floor. I was 19 years old, but in that moment, I was the oldest person in the room. They reached the table. The air around them crackled with tension. "Haley," Mom breathed, her voice trembling. She reached out a hand as if to touch my shoulder. I leaned back slightly, just out of reach. "Sit down," I said. It wasn't a request. It was a directive. They looked at each other, confused by the shift in gravity. Usually, I was the one standing while they sat. Usually, I was the one serving. Slowly, awkwardly, they pulled out the chairs and sat down. Mom across from me, Dad and Logan on either side of her. We were a family portrait of ruin. "We are here," Dad said, his voice gruff. "Now, tell us how we stop this investigation." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had toasted Logan as the future while stealing my past. "You don't stop it," I said. "The train has already left the station. I just brought you here to show you the map of where it is going." I slid the folder across the table. The noise of the airport coffee shop faded into the background. The only thing I could hear was the sound of my own heart, beating a steady, victorious rhythm. I am here, I thought. And for the first time, I am the one driving the car. The folder lay on the table between us like a loaded weapon. My mother, Diane, stared at it, but she was not really seeing the documents. Her eyes were darting around the coffee shop, scanning the faces of strangers, checking for recognition. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. It was not the shrinking of age or guilt. It was the terrified contraction of a woman who realized she was no longer the protagonist of her own life. She took off her sunglasses slowly, revealing eyes that were rimmed with red. But her makeup was still flawless, even in crisis. Diane Boyd would never be caught without her armor. "Haley," she started. Her voice was a low, breathy register that she reserved for funerals and parent-teacher conferences where I was in trouble. "I am glad you came. I truly am." She reached across the table. Her fingers, manicured in a soft pink, hovered near my hand. I did not move mine away, but I did not open my palm to receive her. I just let my hand rest there, a stone against the wood. "We have been doing a lot of thinking," she continued, withdrawing her hand when she realized I wasn't going to hold it. "I have been listening to your show, the podcast." I raised an eyebrow. "You listened to it?" "I did," she said. "And I want to say, I didn't realize you felt that way. I remember some of those events differently. Of course, memory is a tricky thing, but I'm sorry that you felt abandoned. That was never our intention." My heart gave a stupid, treacherous lurch. For 19 years, I had starved for those words. I am sorry. I didn't realize. It was the oxygen I had been holding my breath for. For a split second, the little girl inside me wanted to leap across the table, bury her face in her mother's coat, and cry until the hurt went away. I wanted to believe that the last 4 months had been a wake-up call, that she had finally seen me. I almost softened. I almost said, "It's okay, Mom." But then, she sighed. It was a sharp, frustrated sound. "But Haley," she said, leaning in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you have to understand what this is doing to us, to the family name." The oxygen vanished. The little girl in my chest curled up and went cold. "What is it doing, Mom?" I asked. My voice was flat. "People think we are monsters," she hissed. "I went to the grocery store yesterday, and Mrs. Higgins, the woman who runs the charity drive, she turned her cart around in the aisle to avoid me. People are whispering at the club. I was supposed to chair the spring gala, and they sent me an email yesterday saying they are going in a different direction this year." She looked at me, her eyes wide with indignation. She wasn't crying because she had hurt me. She was crying because she had lost her committee chair. "And Logan," she continued, gesturing to my brother who was staring sullenly at his paper cup. "His workplace is asking questions. That human resources woman called the house, Haley. She asked if there were pending legal issues regarding fraud. Do you know how embarrassing that is? He is on a performance plan. He could lose his job." "He stole my identity," I said. "He borrowed your credit," she corrected sharply, "and we are ready to pay it back. Dad has the check right here." My father reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded check. He slid it across the table. I didn't look at the amount. "So here is what we are going to do," Mom said, her voice taking on that familiar, managing tone. She was back in control. She had a plan. "We pay off the card today. You call the bank and tell them it was a misunderstanding. A family arrangement that got messy. We withdraw the affidavit." She paused, waiting for me to nod. When I didn't, she played her ace. "And then," she said, "we make a statement together." "A statement," I repeated. "Yes, a video. Or maybe just a post on your TikTok thing. We sit down together. We smile. We tell everyone that we talked it out, that families fight but they love each other. We show them that the Boyd family is whole. We can spin it as a mental health awareness thing. Healing, reconciliation. People love that stuff. Haley, it would be good for your brand too." I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. It was architectural in its scale. She didn't want a daughter. She wanted a PR crisis manager. She wanted me to use the credibility I had built with my own pain to whitewash their reputation. She wanted me to look into a camera and lie to 3 million people so she could get her position back at the spring gala. I looked at the check. I looked at Logan, who was watching me with a mixture of hope and resentment. I looked at Dad, who just wanted the problem to go away. I let out a short, dry laugh. "You are incredible," I said softly. "What?" Mom blinked. "You aren't sorry you did it," I said, meeting her eyes. "You are sorry people believe me." "That is not true," she protested. "We love you." "Do you?" I asked. The noise of the coffee shop seemed to drop away. I felt a strange sense of focus. I needed to know one thing. I needed to close the loop on the night that started it all. "Mom," I said. "December 19th, O'Hare Airport." She flinched at the date. "Haley, don't start with that again." "I called you 12 times, I said. "I stood on the curb for 3 hours. I called Dad. I called Logan. I called you. 12 times. "We were busy," Logan snapped. The music was loud. "Quiet, Logan," I said, not looking at him. I kept my eyes on my mother. "I want to know the truth. Not the version you tell the neighbors. Not the version you tell yourself. The truth." I leaned forward. "Did you not hear the phone? Or did you see it ringing and choose not to answer?" She looked away. She looked at her purse. She looked at the exit sign. "It doesn't matter now," she muttered. It matters to me, I said. It is the only thing that matters. Did you see the calls? She was silent for a long time. Her fingers picked at the leather strap of her handbag. Finally, she looked up. Her face was stripped of the pretense. For the first time, she looked ugly in her selfishness. Yes, she whispered. I felt the air leave my lungs. You saw them. I saw the name on the screen, she said, her voice defensive now, rising in pitch. I saw Haley pop up, but Logan was giving his speech. Everyone was clapping. I was holding a glass of wine. I thought if I answered, I would have to leave. I would have to get in the car. I would miss the toast. I would miss the moment. She shrugged, a small, helpless gesture. I just didn't want to leave the celebration. Haley, I thought you could wait. You're always so capable. I thought you would just figure it out. I thought you could wait. There it was. The foundational truth of my existence in their eyes. I was the one who waited. I was the one who could handle the cold while they basked in the warmth. I was the subplot that could be paused so the main character could have his moment. It should have devastated me. It should have broken me right there in the coffee shop. But instead, I felt lighter. The weight of the what if was gone. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was right. They had seen me drowning and decided that saving me would ruin the vibe of the party. I looked at the curb outside the window. I saw a girl standing there with a suitcase, waiting for a ride. I looked back at the woman across the table. I didn't need her to pick me up anymore. I had already walked home. I sat back in my chair. I pushed the check back across the table toward my father. Keep your money, I said. What? Dad looked panicked. Haley, take it. Pay the card. I don't want your money, I said. And I am not making a video. You have to, Mom cried, forgetting to whisper. People at the next table turned to look. If you don't, we are ruined. Logan will lose his job. The bank will prosecute. That is not my problem, I said. We are your family. Then act like it, I said. My voice was steel. You want a relationship. You want reconciliation, fine. Here are the terms. I held up one finger. 1. No public statements. I will not post about you, and you will not post about me. I will not help you clean up your image. You broke it. You fix it. I held up a second finger. 2. You pay the credit card debt directly to the bank. I am not touching that money. You deal with the fraud department. If they decide to press charges because you admitted to a felony, that is between you and the federal government. I will not lie to an investigator to save you. I held up a third finger. 3. If you want to speak to me, you go to therapy, real therapy, not a life coach, not a spa weekend. I want to see a receipt from a licensed psychologist. Until then, you do not call me. You do not text me. You do not come to Denver. I stood up. My mother looked up at me, her mouth open in shock. She looked like a queen who had just been told her crown was made of tin. You can't do this, she whispered. I am your mother. I know, I said. And for 19 years, that was enough to make me stay. But it is not enough anymore. Logan stood up, his face red. You are such a... Careful, Logan. I cut him off. I am the only reason you aren't currently explaining to the police why you furnished your apartment with stolen funds. Sit down. He sat. The power dynamic had shifted permanently. The golden boy was tarnished, and the glass child was bulletproof. I picked up my folder. I looked at them one last time. They looked like a tableau of misery. They were trapped in the consequences of their own choices, and for the first time, I wasn't offering to carry the burden for them. Goodbye, Mom, I said. I turned around and walked toward the door. Haley, she called after me. Haley, wait. What are we supposed to tell people? I didn't turn back. I pushed open the glass door and stepped out into the cool Chicago air. Tell them the truth, I said to the wind. Or don't. I don't care. I walked to my car. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I got into the driver's seat and locked the doors. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of jet fuel and freedom. I checked my email. A notification from the leasing office in Denver popped up. Subject application update. Dear Ms. Boyd, following the resolution of the dispute on your credit report and the letter of employment from Holloway and Pike, we are pleased to inform you that your application for Unit 4B has been reconsidered and approved. Welcome home. I smiled. I started the engine. I didn't look back at the coffee shop. I merged onto the highway, heading north, not toward Milwaukee, but toward the on-ramp that would take me back to my life. I had left them at the airport, and this time, I wasn't coming back to pick them up. Before I turned my back on the table in that coffee shop, before I walked out into the Chicago wind, there was one final, desperate exchange that seared itself into my memory. It was the moment the last illusion crumbled. My mother, Diane, had stopped crying. The realization that her tears were not working had dried them up instantly, replaced by a cold, sharp panic. She looked at the folder of evidence I had placed between us, the timeline, the IP logs, the affidavit, and she finally understood that this was not a tantrum. It was a legal strategy. "If you file anything," she hissed, her voice low and trembling with a mix of fear and fury, "you will destroy us. Do you understand that you will destroy your brother's career? You will destroy our standing in the community. You are holding a grenade. Haley." I looked her dead in the eye. My pulse was steady. "I am not destroying you. Mom," I said, my voice calm enough to cut glass. "I am stopping you." I reached into my bag and pulled out one last envelope. I slid it across the table. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a roadmap. Inside was a copy of the credit repair timeline, a list of the specific forms they needed to sign to accept liability without facing jail time if the bank was feeling merciful, and a guide on how to lock their own credit so they would never be tempted to use each other's names again. "This is not a threat," I said. "This is the end. It is the closure you refuse to give me." Diane stared at the papers. She looked up at me, her face pale. "You have this all organized, the dates, the laws, the paperwork." She paused, and a look of genuine horror crossed her face. "You planned this. You have been planning this whole thing while pretending to be busy with school." "I didn't plan it at school," I corrected her. "I wrote the first note in a folder called Receipts on the night of December 19th. I wrote it while I was standing on the curb at O'Hare, freezing, watching other fathers pick up their daughters." The mention of the airport hit her like a physical blow. She flinched. Logan, who had been sulking in his hoodie, suddenly slammed his hand on the table. His phone had been buzzing incessantly, work emails, no doubt, asking where the quarterly report was. He glared at me, his eyes wet with the stress of a man who had never learned to swim. "You are enjoying this," he spat. "You think you are so smart. Just wait until you need something. Wait until you need a cosigner or a reference. You are burning the only bridge you have." He grabbed his phone to call me, a reflex of dominance, trying to force my attention even though I was sitting 3 feet away. I watched my own screen light up with his name. "Incoming call, Logan." I looked at the screen. I looked at him. I didn't decline the call. I didn't silence it. I pressed the side button and held it down until the screen went black. I turned my phone off completely. It was a small gesture, but it felt like slamming a heavy iron door on a drafty room. "I am not your fixer, Logan," I said, standing up. "I am not your secret bank, Mom, and I am not your cover story for the neighbors. The bridge isn't burning because I lit a match. It is burning because you never maintained it." I dropped a $20 bill on the table to cover the coffee I hadn't touched. "Goodbye," I said. That was when I walked out. That was when I left them sitting in the wreckage of their own expectations. When I got to my car, the silence was absolute. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, watching the travelers rush past with their luggage. I waited for the guilt to come. I waited for that familiar, crushing sense of obligation to wash over me, telling me to go back inside and fix it. But it didn't come. Instead, my phone, which I had powered back on, chimed with a single email notification. I opened it. It was from the property management company in Denver. "Dear Ms. Boyd, we are pleased to inform you that, Following the resolution of the dispute on your credit report and the verification of your employment, your application for the studio apartment has been approved. The lease is attached. Welcome home. I let out a breath. I felt like I had been holding since December. Welcome home. Not a house where I was a guest, not a basement where I was hiding, a home. I drove back to Denver that day, and the miles felt like a victory lap. I signed the lease digitally at a rest stop in Nebraska. By the time I crossed the Colorado state line, I had mentally arranged the furniture. 2 nights later, I sat in the closet of my new studio apartment. It was empty, save for a mattress on the floor and my desk, but the exposed brick was beautiful, and the air smelled like lavender and autonomy. I set up my microphone, I put on my headphones, I opened the recording software. "Welcome to Missed Calls," I said. My voice was different now. It wasn't the shaky voice of a victim, it was the grounded voice of a survivor. This is the final episode of the airport saga. I didn't name them. I didn't tell the audience about the meeting in the coffee shop or the pathetic way Logan had tried to bully me. I didn't want to humiliate them. That would have been revenge. And revenge is messy. I wanted justice. And justice is clean. I learned something this week. I told the microphone. I learned that you can't save people who are addicted to your help. I learned that saying no is a complete sentence. And most importantly, I learned that the family you are born into is a starting point, not a life sentence. If the foundation is rotten, you don't keep patching the cracks. You build a new house. I uploaded the episode. The reaction was quiet at first, then overwhelming. Thousands of comments poured in, not just cheering for the drama, but thanking me for the permission to let go. I was sitting on my floor, reading a comment from a girl in Ohio who had just opened her own bank account, when a text message came through. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a threat. It was from a number I had unblocked only for emergencies. Mom. I listened to the episode. I understand. I am trying. I stared at the words. I understand. I am trying. 6 months ago, I would have replied instantly. I would have said, "Thank you, Mom. That is all I wanted." I would have rushed to validate her effort. I would have rewarded the crumbs she threw me. But I looked at the time. It was 9 in the evening. I had work in the morning. I had a yoga class scheduled. I had a life. I didn't type a reply. I didn't leave her on read to be mean. I just put the phone down. I realized that her trying was her journey, not mine. I didn't have to spectate it. I didn't have to cheer for it. I was free to simply exist. The credits of the Boyd family drama had rolled, and I had walked out of the theater. 3 months later, the winter snow had melted, and the spring air in Chicago was crisp and clean. I was back at O'Hare. I pulled my car up to the curb at Terminal 3, the exact same spot where I had stood with 6% battery. The concrete looked the same. The sliding doors hissed with the same rhythm. The wind still cut through the air, sharp and biting. But everything else was different. I checked my dashboard. My gas tank was full. My phone was charged to 100%. My bank account had a balance that made me feel safe. A number growing steadily in the account named Gate 12. I wasn't here to be picked up. I was here to pick someone up. My best friend from college, a girl named Sarah, who had let me sleep on her couch when I couldn't pay rent, who had brought me soup when I was sick, who had cheered louder than anyone when I got the job, was flying in for the weekend. I watched the doors. A text popped up on my screen. "Sarah, I landed, walking out now." I typed back, "I am here. Hazard lights are on. Look for the smile." And then I saw her. She came through the doors, wrestling with a duffel bag, looking around frantically. She saw my car. Her face lit up. She dropped her bag and waved, a gesture of pure, unburdened joy. I got out of the car. I didn't wait for her to come to me. I walked around the hood and opened the trunk. I looked at the spot on the curb where 19-year-old Haley had stood. I could almost see her there, shivering, checking her phone, waiting for a mother who wouldn't come. I wanted to tell her it was going to be okay. I wanted to tell her that the cold was temporary. Sarah ran up to me and threw her arms around my neck. "You are actually here," she laughed. "Right on time." "Always," I said, hugging her back. feeling the warmth of a promise kept. I looked up at the sky. It was a brilliant, endless blue. I wasn't the girl who was forgotten anymore. I was the woman who remembered. I remembered my worth. I remembered my power. And most of all, I remembered that the only person who absolutely had to show up for Haley Boyd was me. And I had finally arrived. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe relaxing at home? Please let me know in the comments below so we can connect. And if you enjoyed Haley's journey, please subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can reach even more people who might need to hear it.